if you're a progressive, recently it doesn't really seem like there's a lot of reasons to be hopeful in this country, considering how Republicans are just doing everything to harm the American people, and how members of the Democratic Party establishment don't really seem like they actually want to resist Donald Trump and the Republicans in the way that they claimed they would when he was first elected. However, Bernie Sanders is one of the few politicians that's doing everything in his power to make sure that the American people do not lose hope. Now, case in point, so as you all know, the Republican Party they're just not done with healthcare as of yet. And I was hoping that once they failed initially with their healthcare law, and when they weren't able to repeal the Affordable Care Act, that they would just leave it alone. But unfortunately, they're not going to do that. And the bill that they have come back with is even worse than the one that they first proposed. However, Bernie Sanders is capitalizing on this time, and we're all talking about healthcare reform, to counter their shitty bill with one that actually would help the American people, with one that has majority support in the country, and that is a Medicare for All system.
The Trump care has been revived. The House Freedom Caucus has prevailed upon the leadership to make it more favorable to the insurance industry in some ways, to take away more patient protections. And I just get the sense this is DOA on the Senate. Like, what, even conservative colleagues of yours, they're not going to run with this ball.
I don't think so. I mean, again, here you have a president who said, I'm a different type of Republican. I am going to fight for health care for, quote unquote, everybody. And then he brought forth, along with Paul Ryan, a health care proposal which threw 24 million Americans off of health insurance, raised premiums for older workers, defunded Planned Parenthood, and cut Medicaid by $800 billion. And this proposal will likely be worse. Look, bottom line here, Chris, I'm going to introduce a Medicare for All single-payer program. We've got to join the rest of the world and guarantee health care to all of our people as a right.
Now, the part of the clip that I didn't show you is Chris Hayes just quickly changing the subject because he does not want to talk about Medicare for All because, you know, currently it's really not in the Democratic Party's interest to support a Medicare for All system. But best believe that when Bernie Sanders introduces this bill, we've got to hit the ground running. Just like with H.R. 676, the efforts of grassroots activists, Justice Democrats, and you have made the number of co-sponsors just shoot up every single week. So last week, when I filmed, the bill had 98 co-sponsors, and now it has 6 more. We are up to 104 co-sponsors. So if we can do what we did in the Senate, like we did in the House, then we can make sure that Medicare for All becomes a reality someday, because even if it can't pass right now with the Republican-controlled Congress, at least we know who's on our side with respect to the Democratic Party. However, I really want to emphasize that there's a couple of Democrats, or actually I shouldn't say a couple, there's many Democrats who are pretending to be our allies when they're not actually our allies. So they'll come out in favor of single-payer healthcare, but when it comes to co-sponsoring bills that would in fact bring Medicare for All to America, they're not on board. So Nancy Pelosi, you know, she says she's in favor of single payer, but she has not yet co-sponsored H.R. 676. And I'll say it again, prove me wrong, Nancy. I want to eat my own words. I want nothing more than to be corrected here and for you to prove me wrong, but she hasn't yet. And it's because she's taking money from health insurance companies who do not want a Medicare for All system. Now, this is akin to the Republicans who pretend to be allies with us when it comes to climate change. They'll say, you know what, I don't think climate change is actually a hoax. However, I don't think it's man-made. So it's happening, but it's not because of human activity. Well, with that, you're effectively denying climate change anyway, so you're not making progress, you're just moving the goalposts, and this is what many Democrats are doing with respect to Medicare for All, and we have to be cognizant of their shady tactics. And even, you know, you hear Tom Perez saying it. We believe that healthcare is a right. This is what Bernie Sanders says as he puts forward the idea of a single-payer healthcare system. But when asked whether or not the DNC is on board with single payer, Tom Perez refused to answer the question. So the bottom line is that this is non-negotiable. Either you support Medicare for all or we do not support you. Now, there's another way that Bernie Sanders is trying to give us a little bit of hope right now, and he has encouraged many Democrats to get on board with a $15 minimum wage. So The Hill explains Democrats are uniting behind Senator Bernie Sanders in a legislative push to raise the federal minimum wage to $15 per hour. Sanders will reintroduce a $15 minimum wage bill Wednesday, attracting support from some Democrats such as Senator Patty Murray, who previously supported a smaller minimum wage increase. Representatives Keith Ellison and Bobby Scott will drop a companion bill in the House. Ellison has previously pushed for $15 an hour, while Scott joined Murray in calling for a $12 minimum wage hike last Congress. And look, I want to take a minute to applaud these Democrats who are finally waking up to the fact that a $15 minimum wage is the starting point. You can't go into negotiations with Republicans expecting them to implement a $12 minimum wage. If you even want $12, then you've got to start at $15. And I've made the case before, and people think I'm an extremist, but so be it, that we've got to start at a $20 an hour minimum wage, because by the time we start negotiating with Republicans in Congress, we're going to be, we'll negotiate down to $15. So in order to be where we actually want to be, I think we need to aim higher. But here's the thing. If you want the economy to grow, you have to increase the purchasing power of the middle and lower classes, and you only do that by putting more money into their hands. Now, the rebuttal is that this will increase the cost of living for everyone if we raise the minimum wage, but in cities that have actually implemented a $15 minimum wage, their economy was actually heavily benefited from this. So that's just Republican nonsense. That's what corporations who don't want to raise the wage and pay their workers a fair price want you to believe. So getting back to Bernie here, he is the one politician, in the Senate at least, that's really looking out for us. And I think that even though these bills don't have a chance of passing, let's all be realistic here, you can tell that he is moving the Democratic Party, at least with respect to a couple of issues, but they've got to get on board with all the other issues that are non-negotiable for progressives. And you can call it a purity test. I don't care. Medicare for all is non-negotiable. A $15 minimum wage is non-negotiable. If you're going to be progressive and represent left-wingers, then actually do it. Actually represent us. And you could really tell that Bernie Sanders is having some influence, but not as much as he should be having. And that's not because of Bernie Sanders. That's because of the reluctance of the Democratic Party. So, my hat goes off to Bernie Sanders. This is great. This segment of the Humanist Report is sponsored by Lunar Data Systems, who launched an Indiegogo campaign to fund production for the Pluto Project, which is a computer monitor designed to ensure the utmost privacy through the use of glasses that allows only you to see what's on your computer monitor. And if you think this looks cool, which it does, they are offering these perks to supporters of the campaign. Support their Indiegogo campaign to fund the Pluto Project by visiting the link down below.
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.